I wasn't supposed to be in Portland that night. The chemistry conference at the downtown Hilton ended 2 hours early. And instead of staying at the hotel like I'd planned, I thought I'd surprise my son David and my grandson Marcus with a visit. After all, I'd driven 3 hours from Eugene, and it had been almost a month since I'd seen them. What's another 45 minutes to spend an evening with family? When I pulled my old Ford truck into David's driveway at 9:15 on that cold December Friday, I expected to see the warm glow of the living room through the front windows. Maybe the flicker of the television. Perhaps Marcus doing his homework at the kitchen table. The house looked peaceful from the outside. A nice 4-bedroom ranch-style home in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Christmas lights still up from last week. 2 cars in the driveway. Everything looked normal. Everything looked fine. But then I noticed something that made me pause before getting out of the truck. There was a faint light coming from the attached garage. Not the bright overhead fluorescent that David used when he was working on something, but a dim yellowish glow like a small lamp. The side door to the garage was slightly ajar, just a crack. And as I walked closer, I heard something that made every muscle in my body tense. Crying. Quiet, muffled crying. The kind of crying someone does when they're trying desperately not to be heard. I pushed the door open slowly, not sure what I'd find. The garage was cold, brutally cold. I could see my breath in the air. The concrete floor was stained with old motor oil. Tools hung on the walls. David's workbench sat in the corner covered in sawdust. And there on the floor in the far corner was a sleeping bag. A thin, cheap sleeping bag that looked like it came from a clearance bin. Next to it sat a small battery-powered camping lantern, and beside that a stack of library books with frayed covers. On that sleeping bag, wearing a heavy jacket, a knit cap, and gloves with the fingers cut out, sat my 14-year-old grandson, Marcus. His wheelchair was parked beside him, and his face was buried in his hands, his thin shoulders shaking as he cried. Marcus. My voice came out rough, catching in my throat. His head snapped up, and I saw the panic flash across his face before recognition set in. Grandpa, what are you doing here? I crossed the garage in 3 strides and knelt down beside him, my knees protesting against the cold concrete. Up close, I could see things that made my heart sink. Dark circles under his eyes that looked like bruises. His face thinner than I remembered. His jacket, while warm, was clearly too small. He'd grown in the last month, and the sleeves ended 3 inches above his wrists. His hands, even with those fingerless gloves, were red and chapped from the cold. What are you doing in the garage, buddy? I kept my voice gentle, even though everything inside me was screaming. I live here now, he said it matter-of-factly, like he was commenting on the weather. Then he quickly wiped his face with his sleeve. Did Dad know you were coming? No, I surprised everyone. Conference ended early. I looked around the garage again, really seeing it this time. A case of bottled water, a box of granola bars, a small plastic bin that probably held his clothes. What do you mean you live here? Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes. Stephanie, she needed the house for her projects. She said the garage was just temporary until they figured out a better arrangement. That was 3 months ago. 3 months. 3 months of my grandson sleeping on a concrete floor in December in Oregon. 3 months of him being out here while Marcus. How many bedrooms does this house have? 4. His voice got even quieter. Riley has 1. Madison has 1. Stephanie turned the 4th one into her craft room. She makes wreaths and does scrapbooking and stuff. She said she needed space for her creativity. I had to take a slow breath to keep from exploding right then and there. Where do you eat dinner? I usually microwave something. There are frozen dinners in the freezer in here. He gestured to an old chest freezer against the wall. It's easier than bothering everyone. Bothering everyone, I repeated slowly. Marcus, where's your father right now? On a business trip. He left Wednesday. Won't be back until tomorrow afternoon. And Stephanie knows you're out here right now. For the first time, Marcus looked up at me, and what I saw in his eyes broke something inside me. It wasn't just sadness or loneliness. It was resignation, acceptance, like he'd already decided this was what he deserved. She knows. Everyone knows. Riley feels bad about it sometimes, but she doesn't say anything because Mom gets mad. Madison. He trailed off, then shrugged. Madison thinks I'm lucky I get my own space. I sat down fully on the cold concrete, not caring that it soaked through my pants, not caring about anything except the fact that my grandson, my sweet, gentle grandson, who'd been through so much, already had been living like this. Marcus, tell me the truth. When was the last time you had a real meal? Not a frozen dinner, a real meal. He had to think about it. That alone told me everything I needed to know. Thanksgiving, I guess. A month ago. Dad insisted I eat with everyone.
Insisted, I said quietly, yeah.
Stephanie wasn't happy about it. She said it was a family holiday, and he stopped, then added in barely a whisper. She said I wasn't really family. Not anymore. Not since Dad married her and she brought Riley and Madison. She said I was from the old life and this was the new life, and I didn't fit in the new life because he gestured to his wheelchair. Every word was a knife. I'd taught high school chemistry for 37 years. I'd seen neglect. I'd seen abuse. I'd reported my share of cases to Child Protective Services. But this was my grandson, my own flesh and blood, and I'd missed it. I'd called every week and David always said everything was fine. Marcus always got on the phone and said everything was okay. I'd believed them because I wanted to believe them because it was easier than confronting the possibility that something was very wrong. Marcus, look at me. I waited until he raised his eyes. Am I mad at you? I don't know. His voice cracked. Am I bad, Grandpa? Is that why they don't want me around? I try to be quiet. I try not to need anything. I use the bathroom in the basement even though it's hard with the wheelchair because Stephanie says I take too long in the upstairs one. I stay out here so I don't mess up the house, but it's still not enough. I'm still a problem. That did it. That shattered the last bit of control I had over my emotions. I pulled my grandson into my arms, wheelchair and all, and held him while he cried. Really cried. Not that muffled hidden crying from before. His whole body shook with sobs, and I felt his tears soak through my shirt. You are not bad, I said firmly into his hair. You are not a problem. You are my grandson, and you are loved, and none of this is your fault. Do you hear me? None of this? Then why? The question came out broken, desperate. Why would Dad let this happen? Why doesn't he want me anymore? I didn't have an answer, not one that wouldn't hurt him more. So I just held him tighter and said, I don't know, buddy, but I'm here now, and things are going to change right now. Tonight. He pulled back and looked at me with those red, swollen eyes. What do you mean? I mean, pack a bag. You're coming home with me tonight. But Dad will be mad. Stephanie will be furious. I can't just let me worry about your father. Let me worry about Stephanie. I stood up, my knees popping, and helped him into his wheelchair. Where are your clothes? He showed me the plastic bin. It contained maybe a week's worth of clothing, most of it dirty. His school uniform. Marcus attended a private school that David and Stephanie paid for, probably for appearances, was wadded in the corner, coffee stain on the shirt, collar frayed. I grabbed the whole bin. What about my books? He gestured to the stack from the library. We'll get them. We'll get everything. But first, we're getting you out of this garage. As I loaded his few belongings into my truck, Marcus kept looking back at the house nervously. Grandpa, maybe we should wait until Dad gets back. Maybe we should talk to him first. We'll talk to him. But you're not spending another night out here. I opened the passenger door and helped him transition from his wheelchair to the seat. We'd done this 1,000 times over the past 2 years since the accident. I folded his wheelchair and put it in the truck bed. Before I could get to the driver's side, the front door of the house opened and Stephanie stood there in the porch light. She was a tall woman, blonde hair in a messy bun, wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweatshirt that probably cost more than everything in Marcus's plastic bin combined. Her expression shifted from surprise to annoyance in about half a second. George, what are you doing here? She didn't sound happy to see me. She never did. Picking up my grandson, I kept my voice level, but everything in me wanted to scream at her. He's coming to stay with me for a while. You can't just take him. She crossed her arms. David didn't authorize this. David isn't here. And from what I understand, he hasn't been here much at all lately. 3 months, Stephanie. You've had Marcus sleeping in that garage for 3 months. It's temporary. She said it with such casual dismissal, like we were discussing a minor inconvenience. We're renovating. We need the space. You're not renovating. You have a craft room. I felt my hands clenching into fists and deliberately relaxed them. You have a room full of scrapbooking supplies while my grandson sleeps on concrete in December. He wanted to be out there. Her voice rose. He said he needed space from everyone. He's always so dramatic about everything. The wheelchair, the doctor appointments, the physical therapy. It's constant. Riley and Madison need stability. And Marcus he brings chaos. It's easier this way. I stared at her. Actually stared, trying to comprehend how someone could say those words about a child. About a disabled child who'd lost his mother 2 years ago in the same accident that put him in that wheelchair. Easier for who? I asked quietly. For everyone, David agreed. This was best. He knows Marcus is difficult. He knows my grandson is not difficult. He's traumatized. He's neglected, and he's coming with me. I opened my truck door. You can call David and tell him whatever you want. But Marcus isn't staying here another night. You can't do this. I'll call the police. Stephanie started down the porch steps. Go ahead. I got in the truck and started the engine. Call them, please. I'd love to explain to the police why a 14-year-old disabled child has been living in an unheated garage for 3 months. I'd love for them to see where he's been sleeping. I'd love for them to document everything that stopped her. For just a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Not guilt exactly, more like calculation, like she was suddenly realizing how this might look to authorities. This is kidnapping, she said. But there was less conviction in her voice now. No, this is family taking care of family. I put the truck in reverse. Tell David to call me when he gets back. As we pulled away, I saw Stephanie standing in the driveway, her phone already out. Let her call David. Let her spin whatever story she wanted. I had Marcus safe beside me, and that was all that mattered right now. The drive back to Eugene was quiet. Marcus stared out the window, occasionally wiping his eyes. About halfway there, I stopped at a late-night diner, one of those old-school places with vinyl booths and endless coffee. I ordered Marcus a real meal. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans, a slice of apple pie. I watched him eat slowly at first, like he was afraid someone would take it away. Then faster, like he couldn't remember the last time he'd been actually hungry instead of just surviving. When did you eat last? I asked gently. This morning. Granola bar. He took another bite of meatloaf. Sometimes I forget. It's easier when I don't think about being hungry. My God. My grandson had been rationing granola bars and teaching himself not to feel hunger. That's not going to happen anymore. I said, you're going to eat real meals 3 times a day, snacks if you want them. You're going to have a warm bed in a heated room. You're going to be treated like a human being. He looked up at me, pie halfway to his mouth. How long can I stay? As long as you need to. As long as you want to. Dad's going to make me go back. We'll see about that. We got to my house around midnight. It wasn't much. A small 3-bedroom cottage on a quiet street near the university where I'd taught for decades. Since my wife Helen died 5 years ago, I'd lived alone. The guest room was full of boxes and old teaching supplies, but Marcus's old room, the one he used to stay in when he visited as a little boy, was ready. I'd kept it that way, hoping he'd visit more often. Now I was grateful I had. I helped Marcus get settled. He took a shower, a long one, and when he came out, his skin was pink from the heat and steam. I gave him a pair of my old sweatpants and a t-shirt, both way too big on him, and he crawled into bed wearing them. Grandpa. His voice was small in the darkness. I'd been about to leave, but I sat down on the edge of the bed instead. Yeah, buddy. What if I have nightmares about being sent back? Then I'll be right down the hall. You can come get me anytime. What if Stephanie's right? What if I am too much trouble? What if you get tired of stop? I put my hand on his shoulder. Marcus, listen to me. You could never be too much trouble. You are my grandson. You are family. And real family doesn't give up on each other. Real family doesn't make you sleep in garages. Real family doesn't make you feel like you don't belong. He was quiet for a moment, then whispered, I missed you, Grandpa. I missed you too, and I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening sooner, but I see it now, and I'm going to fix this. I stayed with him until he fell asleep, his breathing evening out, his face finally relaxing. Then I went to my own room and called David's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. I wasn't surprised. Stephanie had probably called him already, and he was avoiding me. "David, this is your father," I said to the voicemail. "Marcus is with me. He's safe, he's warm, he's fed, and he's not going back to that garage ever. We need to talk tomorrow face to face. Don't call. Come to my house. We'll talk then." I hung up and sat on my bed, suddenly exhausted, but I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying Marcus's words. "Am I bad, Grandpa?" How long had he been asking himself that question? How many nights had he cried himself to sleep on that concrete floor, trying to understand what he'd done to deserve this treatment? The next morning, I woke up at 6:30 out of habit. I made coffee, started breakfast, scrambled eggs, bacon, toast, and waited. Marcus appeared around 8, navigating his wheelchair down the hallway with practiced ease. He looked better, rested, but there was still that wariness in his eyes, like he was waiting for the other shoe to drop. "Morning, buddy. Hungry?" He nodded, and I served him a full plate. We ate together in comfortable silence, and I watched color come back into his face. After breakfast, I suggested we go shopping. "Shopping for what?" Marcus asked. "Clothes that fit, school supplies, whatever you need." I grabbed my keys. "We're going to Target." At Target, I bought Marcus everything. New jeans, new shirts, new socks, new shoes, winter coat that actually fit him, toiletries, school supplies, books he'd been wanting. I didn't care about the cost. I didn't care that the cart was overflowing. Every item was a small act of love, a small way of saying you matter. You deserve nice things. You are not a burden. Marcus kept trying to talk me out of things. "That's too expensive, Grandpa. I don't need that. It's too much." Each time, I'd put the item in the cart anyway and say, "Let me decide what's too much." By the time we got back to my house, it was almost noon. I was helping Marcus put his new clothes away when the doorbell rang. I knew who it would be. David stood on my porch looking haggarded. He'd driven straight from his business trip, still wearing his wrinkled suit, tie loosened, 50-hodered shadow on his face. Behind him, her arms crossed and her face set in hard lines, stood Stephanie. "Dad, we need to talk," David said. "Yes, we do." I stepped back and let them in, but I didn't invite them to sit. We stood in the foyer, and I could hear Marcus's wheelchair from down the hall. He'd heard them arrive. "You want to explain to me why your son has been sleeping in your garage?" "It's complicated," David started. "No, it's not. It's actually very simple. You let your wife treat your son like he doesn't exist. You let her take away his bedroom and give it to her crafts. You let him sleep on concrete in winter. You let him go hungry. You let him believe he's worthless. What part of that is complicated, David?" "I didn't know it was that bad," David said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I'm on the road 4 days a week. I trusted Stephanie to what? To treat your disabled son with basic human decency. That's a pretty low bar, David. Don't put this all on me." Stephanie snapped. "I have 2 children of my own to worry about. Marcus is difficult. He requires constant attention. The wheelchair, the medical appointments, the special accommodations. It's exhausting. Riley and Madison need stability, and Marcus disrupts everything." I looked at my son. "You're hearing this, right? You're hearing your wife call your son a disruption." David's face tightened. "Stephanie has a point. Marcus does need a lot of care. He's a child, a disabled child who lost his mother. Of course he needs care." I felt my voice rising and forced myself to calm down. "That's not disruption. That's called being a parent. You don't understand what it's like," David said. "Living with it every day, the guilt, the constant needs. It's so you solve that by making him disappear. I cut him off by letting your wife push him out of the family, by choosing your comfort over your son's welfare. That's not fair." David said, "Fair? You want to talk about fair? Your son asked me last night if he was bad. He asked me if that's why you don't want him anymore. A 14-year-old child who's been through hell, who lost his mother, who uses a wheelchair, who just wants to feel loved, and you've made him believe he's the problem." I stepped closer to David. "I raised you better than this, Dad." "No, you're going to listen. Marcus is staying with me. He's not going back to that house. He's not going back to that garage. He's not going back to a place where he's treated like he's less than human. You can't just keep him," Stephanie said. "We're his legal guardians. We'll get the police involved if we have to. Please do. I'm begging you. Get the police involved. Get CPS involved. Let them see where Marcus has been living. Let them document the conditions. Let them interview him about how he's been treated. Please, I looked directly at her. I dare you. The color drained from Stephanie's face. David looked between us, confused. What's CPS? He asked. Child Protective Services, I said, because what's been happening in your house, that's called neglect, David. That's called abuse. And I've been a mandatory reporter for almost 4 decades. I know exactly what it looks like. You're blowing this out of proportion, Stephanie said, but her voice wavered. Am I? Let me paint a picture for you both. A disabled 14-year-old forced to sleep in an unheated garage for 3 months. No proper access to food, surviving on granola bars and frozen dinners. No proper access to hygiene facilities. Missing medical appointments. Isolated from the family. Told repeatedly he doesn't belong. Made to believe he's worthless. I paused. Now you tell me, if you heard that story about someone else's child, what would you call it? David looked sick. Actually physically ill. I didn't know it was like that. Because you didn't want to know. You've been traveling 4 days a week, letting Stephanie handle everything, not asking questions because it was easier. Because asking questions might mean having to make hard choices. Well, I'm making the choice for you. Marcus stays with me. For how long? David asked quietly. For as long as he needs, maybe permanently. We'll see. You can't do this, Stephanie insisted. David, tell him he can't do this. But David was staring at the floor, his face pale. Maybe it's better this way. For now, until we figure things out. Figure things out. Stephanie's voice went shrill. You're just going to let him take Marcus. After everything I've done, after all the sacrifices I've made. Sacrifices? The word came from behind us. Marcus had wheeled himself down the hallway and was staring at Stephanie. What sacrifices? You took my bedroom. You made me sleep in the garage. You told me I didn't belong. You told Riley and Madison not to talk to me. You made my dad choose between you and me. And he chose you every single time. He chose you. Marcus, David started. No. Dad, Grandpa asked me last night if you'd been a good father since you married Stephanie. You know what I couldn't answer? I couldn't remember the last time you chose me. The last time you stood up for me. The last time you made me feel like I mattered more than keeping her happy. The silence that followed was devastating. David looked at his son, really looked at him, and I saw the moment it hit him. All of it. Every choice he'd made. Every time he'd looked away. Every moment he'd chosen peace over protection. I'm sorry, David whispered. Sorry isn't enough, Marcus said. His voice was steady, stronger than I'd heard it in years. Sorry doesn't make up for 3 months in the garage. Sorry doesn't make up for feeling like I didn't matter. Sorry doesn't make up for making me believe I was bad. You're not bad, David said, taking a step toward Marcus. I know that now. Grandpa told me. Grandpa showed me. In one night he did more for me than you've done in 2 years. Marcus looked at me and I saw trust there. Relief, safety. I want to stay with Grandpa. David's face crumpled and I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But he'd made his choices. He'd built this situation brick by brick and now he had to live in it. We should go, I said quietly. Marcus needs to rest. If you want to see him, David, you can call. We'll arrange visits, but it'll be on Marcus's terms. This is ridiculous. Stephanie said we're leaving. Come on, David. But David didn't move. He stood there staring at his son. And I could see him doing calculations, weighing options, deciding what mattered more. Go with her if you want, I told him. But you need to understand something. This is the moment. This is where you choose right now. Do you choose your son, or do you choose someone who made your son sleep in a garage? That's not fair. Stephanie said, You're manipulating him. I'm giving him clarity. I kept my eyes on David. I'm showing him what the choice actually is because it's always been this choice. Marcus or Stephanie, your son's welfare or your comfort. And every time you've chosen wrong. David looked at Stephanie, then at Marcus, then back at Stephanie. I could see him struggling, see him wanting to find a middle ground, wanting there to be a way to have both. There is no middle ground here, I said, reading his mind. You can't half protect a child. You can't half love your son. Either you're all in or you're out. David, let's go. Stephanie said again, more firmly this time. He's trying to tear our family apart. No, Marcus said quietly. You already did that. You just made Dad look away while you did it. That's when David broke. I saw it happen. His shoulders sagged. His face fell. And he looked at Stephanie with eyes that finally saw clearly. You made him sleep in the garage, he said slowly, like he was only now processing it. My son, you made my disabled son sleep in an unheated garage in winter. It was temporary and he agreed to it. Stephanie's voice rose defensively. He's 14. He's a child. He doesn't get to agree to sleeping on concrete. David's voice was getting stronger. How did I miss this? How did I let this happen? Because you were never here. Stephanie snapped. You were always traveling, always working, leaving me to deal with everything. You try managing 2 kids and a disabled stepchild. Don't call him that, David said sharply. He's not a stepchild. He's my son. Marcus is my son. It was the first time I'd heard David say those words with conviction in 2 years. The first time he'd claimed Marcus without qualification. I'm done, David said quietly. Stephanie, I'm done. Done with what? But she knew, I could see she knew, with us, with this marriage, with choosing you over him. David looked at Marcus. I can't take back the last 2 years. I can't take back what I let happen, but I can stop it from happening again. You're not serious, Stephanie said, but her voice wavered. You're going to throw away our marriage over this. You threw it away when you made my son sleep in a garage, David said. I just didn't see it until now. Stephanie stared at him, then at me, then at Marcus. When she realized none of us were backing down, her face hardened. Fine, you'll regret this. All of you. Riley and Madison are my children. You'll never see them again. And when this divorce is final, you'll have nothing. I'll have my son. David said, That's something. She left in a fury, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. David stood there in the sudden silence, looking lost. What do I do now? He asked me. Now, I looked at Marcus, who was watching his father warily. No, you prove you mean it. You get a lawyer. You file for divorce. You document everything. You make sure she can't hurt Marcus anymore. And you start showing up. Really showing up. Not just traveling 4 days a week. And checking out when you're home, showing up like a father. I don't know if Marcus will forgive me, David said quietly. That's not your call to make, Marcus said. But you can start by not asking for forgiveness. Start by earning it. David nodded slowly. Can I visit while you're staying here? Marcus looked at me and I gave him a small nod. This was his choice. Maybe, Marcus said, but not yet. I need time. Okay, David said. Okay, I'll wait. He turned to leave, then paused. Marcus, I love you. I know I haven't shown it, but I do and I'm going to do better. Marcus didn't respond. David left quietly and I heard his car pull away. You okay? I asked my grandson. I don't know, he said honestly. Is it really over with her? I think so. Your dad's got a lot to work through, but I think he meant what he said. And if he didn't, if he changes his mind, then you stay here for as long as you want. This is your home now, Marcus. No matter what. That night, after dinner, after homework, after Marcus had gone to bed, I sat at my kitchen table and made a list. I'd spent 40 years teaching chemistry, explaining to teenagers how reactions worked, how you could predict outcomes based on initial conditions. But this wasn't chemistry. This was messier, more complicated. Still, I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I called Child Protective Services myself. I gave them a full report where Marcus had been living, the conditions, the neglect. I gave them David's address. I gave them permission to interview Marcus. I made sure there was a paper trail, documentation, proof, because I'd learned over my decades of teaching that the truth without evidence was just an opinion. And I needed more than opinion. I needed fact. The CPS investigation took 6 weeks. They interviewed Marcus 3 times. They interviewed Riley and Madison separately, and Riley, sweet Riley, told them everything. How Stephanie had told them not to be friends with Marcus. How she'd said Marcus was drama and too much work. How she'd made jokes about the wheelchair at dinner when David wasn't there. How Madison had learned to make those same jokes. They interviewed Marcus's school counselor, who confirmed that his grades had dropped dramatically in the past 6 months, that he'd missed multiple days, that teachers had noticed he seemed withdrawn and sad. They interviewed his pediatrician, who confirmed that Marcus had missed 4 out of 6 scheduled physical therapy appointments, that his weight had dropped, that he showed signs of depression and possible malnutrition. They interviewed David, who by this point had hired a divorce attorney and moved out of the house he'd shared with Stephanie. To his credit, he told them everything. He didn't try to minimize it. He didn't make excuses. He admitted that he'd failed his son, that he'd been complicit in neglect, that he'd chosen wrong. The final CPS report was damning: substantiated neglect by step-parent, secondary neglect by biological father due to failure to protect. Immediate custody change recommended. They didn't remove Marcus. He was already with me, but they made it official. Temporary guardianship granted to me, pending resolution of family situation. Stephanie fought it at first, hired her own lawyer, claimed Marcus had lied about everything. But then her ex-husband Riley and Madison's biological father got a copy of the CPS report. He'd been paying child support, seeing his daughters every other weekend, staying cordial for their sake. But when he read about how Stephanie had treated Marcus, how she'd isolated him, how she'd created an environment of emotional cruelty, he filed for full custody of Riley and Madison. The judge in that case agreed. The same pattern that had harmed Marcus could harm them. Stephanie went from having a house full of children to having none. Supervised visitation every other weekend. That was it. The divorce from David was nasty. Stephanie tried to claim half of everything. Tried to paint herself as the victim. Tried to make David look like the bad guy for abandoning his family. But the CPS report was part of the court record. The judge had read it. When Stephanie's lawyer tried to argue that she'd been overwhelmed and doing her best, the judge asked one simple question. Did you make a disabled child sleep in an unheated garage for 3 months? She had no good answer for that. The divorce was finalized 4 months after that night. I found Marcus in the garage. David got to keep his pension and his retirement accounts. Stephanie got the house and a small settlement. No alimony. Not after what the judge called egregious failures in parental responsibility. David moved to Eugene, got an apartment 10 minutes from my house. Took a new job with a local company that didn't require travel. He started therapy. He started showing up. Every week he asked if Marcus was ready to see him. For the first 2 months, Marcus said no. Then he said maybe. Then he said yes. Their first meeting was awkward. They sat in my living room, Marcus in his wheelchair. David perched on the edge of the couch like he might bolt at any moment. I don't know how to fix this, David said. You can't, Marcus told him. Not all of it. Some things are broken forever. I know, but maybe. Marcus took a breath. Maybe we can build something new, something better. I'd like that, David said, if you'll let me. That was 8 months ago. Today, Marcus splits his time between my house and David's apartment, 50-50 custody officially. In reality, he still spends more time with me. Old habits die hard and he feels safer here, but he's learning to trust David again slowly, carefully, like testing ice to see if it'll hold. He's thriving in school. His grades are back up. He joined the debate team and discovered he loves arguing. He's funny about it, too. Telling me that years of being told he was wrong prepared him perfectly for debate competitions. His physical therapy is consistent, and while he'll never walk again, his upper body strength has improved dramatically. He's made friends. Real friends. Kids who see him, not the wheelchair. Kids who come over to play video games and argue about movies and act like normal teenagers. Last month was his 15th birthday. We had a party. Me, David, Marcus' new friends, even Riley, who'd asked her dad if she could come. She gave Marcus a card she'd made herself. Inside, it said, "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. You deserved better. You deserve better. I'm glad you got out." Marcus cried when he read it. Then he hugged her and said, "Thank you." David gave Marcus a gift too, his old baseball glove from high school. "I know you can't use it," David said, his voice thick. "But I wanted you to have it, to remember that I wasn't always, that I used to be better. I'm trying to be that person again." Marcus looked at that glove for a long time. Then he said, "I missed you, Dad, the real you." "I missed me too," David said. "But I'm back now, and I'm not going anywhere." They cried together, and I stepped out of the room to give them privacy. Some moments are private. Some healing needs to happen between just the two of them. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, after Marcus had gone to bed, I sat on my back porch with a cup of coffee and looked up at the stars. Helen would have known what to say. She always did. She would have told me I did the right thing. she would have told me Marcus was going to be okay. And he was. He really was. I thought about that night 8 months ago, standing in that cold garage, seeing my grandson on that sleeping bag, hearing him cry. I thought about how close we'd come to losing him. Not physically, but in all the ways that matter. How close he'd come to believing he was worthless. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed at that hotel. If I hadn't decided to drive those extra 45 minutes. If I hadn't seen that light in the garage. Would David have eventually noticed? Would Marcus have kept suffering in silence until something broke irreparably? But I did drive those extra miles. I did see that light. I did find him. And sometimes that's all you can do. Show up, pay attention, act when it matters. I finished my coffee and went inside. Down the hall, I could hear Marcus laughing at something on his phone. A real laugh. The kind that comes from joy, not politeness. The kind that means he's okay.